Debbie and I wanted to do a segment together on the politics of Christianity. Well, does Christianity have a politics? This is the question. Debbie has a good friend who is now the pastor of a megachurch in Texas. And he recently gave a sermon talking about why he believes it is his duty to sort of stay out of or above politics or not bring politics into the church. Say a little bit about your friend, because he's a conservative.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he's had that church a long time, I believe 20 plus years, 21 years maybe. And he did mention, we've been watching his sermons the last few weeks, and he did mention us, by the way, in this last one.
He alluded to us.
He alluded to us. And he said, it's okay, I have a friend from high school that is very political. She and her husband are very political, and that's fine for them. But, meaning he will not be political.
Well, interestingly, he does a sort of weird separation of church and state in his own life. So he says, if you want to, he goes, it's not that I don't have political opinions. If you want to hear my opinions, come have lunch with me. I'll tell you what they are. But he seems to imply that when it comes to the pulpit, he's going to somehow abstain from translating his, what as he sees as personal convictions into the church.
Right.
Now, you were listening to this, and obviously we both disagree strongly with this approach. But say why you think that approach is flawed, because his argument is Christianity is not about saving America. It's not about saving the Republican Party. It's about saving souls. And if you introduce other elements, I guess he thinks you're now creating unnecessary division.
Right. And I say to that, why don't you go back and look at how this country was founded and the fact that they very meticulously made it Christian, a Judeo-Christian country, because they understand that really those lines cross. They really do. In order for us in this society to espouse Christian values
and have
religious freedom, we have to have the right people in place. And I very much disagree with the comparison of the presidents, because every president that we've had has been vastly different, as far as this is concerned. And yes, they may all say they're Christians, but we see their fruits and how they sort of how they interact in political life.
Now, historically, you can even go back before the founding to the Pilgrims and look at what was their primary motivation of coming to America. Now, some people say, well, they're fleeing religious persecution. They're coming here for religious liberty. But it's more than that. They were coming here to found a city on a hill. You may say a republic that was maybe not limited to Christians, but nevertheless would be informed by a kind of Christian spirit, and certainly by Judeo-Christian morality.
Right.
Now, let's talk about the church today. I mean, isn't it tragic that we have this great, megaphone, as I call it? Talk about that.
Yeah. So I believe the reason that it's super important to put politics in your sermons is because you have the biggest megaphone in culture, and you are way more influential than even us making movies about politics and about the parties and all of that. You are super influential with your congregation, because then they have family members that they influence, and so on and so on. And there are so many mega churches in this country. I don't understand how California could have fallen the way it did with all of the mega churches in California. Why weren't the pastors preaching this?
Well, now let's talk about what we mean when we say that we want the pastors to be political. We're not saying that we want them to argue about the infrastructure bill.
No,
what we're saying
not.
is that there are certain moral precepts that are critical to Christianity. And it's not just pro-life, right? It's also the infrastructure of the traditional family. It is the idea of local communities. It is the idea of having a reverence for things higher than yourself, of not creating false idols. So you're saying what? That pastors need to... You don't want pastors to tell people how to vote, do you?
No, but I want pastors to tell people which political party espouses the principles of the biblical truth, right?
Right.
And so it's important for them to say, listen, if you vote for a candidate or a political party that has on its platform that it's okay to kill the unborn, then my goodness, what kind of a message are you sending?
Right. And
Right?
let's note that the left-wing churches, by the way, do not hesitate to be overtly political. They're using their megaphone. They're using their pulpit. I mean, they have buses taking people to the polls. Meanwhile, so it's again, you have this discrepancy between the two sides. Their side is fully in the fray, and our side is creating this almost unnecessary kind of abstinence in which the pastor goes, well, you know. Now, do you think part of this is because they're just afraid that their church contributions might go down because there might be some people who walk out? Is it monetarily driven in part?
Well, I maybe I also do think that some of these pastors truly love their congregation, and they don't want to maybe give off the vibe that they only like these people because they vote this way and not these people because they vote that way. So certainly that has a lot to do with it. And I don't really think that you should say which party you should vote for, but the principles are there. All you have to do is look at the party platforms to know which ones they are.
Now, is there a distinction? We talked about this a little bit, I think, last night. We're talking about the difference. There are some churches which have a sort of solid body of believers. Think of Pastor Jeffress, who came on the podcast. This guy's got a hardcore church, 14,000 people. It's perfectly fine to get these people all revved up and mobilized. Now, your friend, however, has a little bit of a seeker church. He's trying to bring people into Christianity,
Right.
former drug addicts. I mean, you've got people who
Right.
are struggling with homosexuality and other
Right.
types of issues.
Right.
Is there an argument for him to say, well, listen, I want to draw these people into the fold first? But I mean, I think our disagreement is he wasn't saying I want to draw them in first and then I will give them the full message.
He was saying never.
I
He was
never
saying
will.
Never will. Right.
Right.
And listen, I love you. I mean, you know who I'm talking about, Pastor John. And I do love listening to your theological.
He's a very
insightful preacher and all of that. But that is the one area that I just don't agree with, because I know that there are too many pastors that agree with this type of preaching. And I think this is the reason why we are where we are in this country.
So what you're saying is the pastors are in perhaps a unique position where collectively they could actually tip the balance.
They absolutely
They could restore the culture. And so it is their unwilling, it's their one hand behind their back that is partly responsible for the mess we're in.
That's right. And for some of them that believe that the IRS is going to come after the church, that is not true. So
they have every right to speak up.
They have every right to speak up.
And so certainly don't be driven by fear. Now, I think in your
Absolutely.
friend's case, it is a principled position, but we're asking you, pal, to reconsider your principle.